I'm going to be reading in our green reading books, getting towards the end of the school year and getting towards the end of the book. I'm going to read on page 233, Granny Nell's Dulcimer. And actually, we've read part of this at school before, so maybe you'll remember a part of it. And we never did finish it, so this time we'll finish. I'll read part of it. I'm going to read kind of the first chapter, and that'll kind of get you started. You'll have an assignment for today, an assignment for tomorrow, and then you probably take your quiz on Wednesday. So Granny Nell's Dulcimer's quiz will be on Wednesday. So I'll read this, and this is your first assignment, just to listen. Then your second assignment I'll give you in a minute, and then your third assignment will be on Wednesday, and then you'll take your quiz. Okay. Granny Nell's Dulcimer, page 233. The Dulcimer. For just a moment, Tansy looked down on the crystal clear water and almost lost her balance. Her thin arm waved in the air as she tried to keep from falling. Then, putting one foot in front of the other, she edged carefully across the log. And kind of a cool picture there. I don't know if you've ever crossed a river or a creek on a log, but there's just something a little unnerving about it as you watch the swirling water below, and you're thinking, one bad step and I'm going to be in the water. Now, it may not be dangerous, but it's definitely going to be cold, and you might even get hurt in the fall, especially if there's rocks below. So I've walked many a log over many a creek at the lake, and you have to be careful. So Tansy, that's why she has her hands out for balance. Okay, so that's how she's getting across that creek. There's not a bridge, evidently, to go across that creek. So she knew she had to, keep her eyes on what she was doing, so that she could keep herself from falling in that water. Next page. Whew, I thought I was going to fall in. She let out her breath and sat down on a stump. A blue jay chattered at her from a nearby tree. He seemed to be making fun of her. Oh, hush, Tansy frowned. I know it's a small stream, but who wants to get wet? The bird hopped back and forth across the twigs, scolding Tansy. Then he stopped, tilting his head to one side to listen. Faint music drifted down the trail. Some good mind pictures right there. First of all, seeing her walk across that log over the creek, and then the blue jay chattering. Blue jays. I don't know that we have blue jays. We have lots of jays. Stiller jay is one of them. But anyway, he chatters. In other words, he squawks or talks. Okay, and she thinks he's making fun of her. And then he tilted his head. You know how birds do, because they don't really have ears, so to speak. And so anyway, they tilt their head and look up, or they tilt their head, and it looked like he was listening to the music. What's that? Tansy whispered. She stood up and brushed off her skirt. As Tansy crept up the trail, the music became louder. She pushed the leaves aside and stared at an old gray cabin. Tansy left her hiding place and moved quietly around the stone chimney. An old woman sat at the porch holding an instrument in her lap. As Tansy watched, the woman plucked the strings with something that looked like a feather. Tansy closed her eyes and listened. The music made her think of sunshine and laughter in faraway places. Come here, child. Tansy jumped and opened her eyes. Well, come on up here, where I can get a look at you. The woman motioned her closer. Tansy slowly climbed the steps and stood in front of the rocker. I don't know if you've seen a dulcimer or not, but it is a little instrument. You usually hold it in your lap, and it's kind of like, it's got strings on it, kind of like a harp would have strings on it, and you pluck them. And sometimes you pluck them with a feather. Sometimes you have a special mechanism that you pluck them with. Or sometimes you just use your finger. And in these days, I'm assuming that this is kind of backwoods country. You probably couldn't afford to have a piano. You couldn't afford to have a violin or something that was expensive. But you could actually make a dulcimer. And it was easy to carry from one place to the next. And so lots of times you would find a dulcimer back in the woods, maybe the woods of Tennessee. Okay, so Tansy slowly climbed the steps and stood in front of the rocker. Page 236. You must have come up the back way, said the woman. Not many people use that trail nowadays. Do you live around here? Yes, ma'am. We just moved back here. Tansy said. Folks around here call me Granny, the old woman said. The rocker creaked as she leaned back. You must be Jim and Nora Ledford's daughter. Tansy's eyes widened. How did you know? I just guessed, said the woman. You look like your mother did when she was about your age. I know your folks from way back. Ask your mother about old Granny Nell. She patted the rocker next to her. Come and sit down. Tansy pulled the rocker closer to Granny Nell, and sat down. Granny slid a dried chicken bone up and down the strings of her instrument. With her right hand, she plucked the strings with a turkey quill. As Granny played one song after another, Tansy discovered that she knew some of the tunes. Just watch, Granny whispered, as she began to play a lively tune called Turkey in the Straw. A tiny head popped out of the branches next to the porch. Then a squirrel scampered out on a limb. Tansy clapped her hands over her mouth to keep from laughing as he hopped up and down. It looked just like he was keeping time to the music. Kind of like that owl, do you remember in our living desert? And that the scorpions were dancing and the owl was bobbing his head back and forth. Well, that's what this squirrel was doing. Shh, warned Granny Nell. Tansy sat very still. Granny played Pop Goes the Weasel. A flock of blue jays swooped down into the yard. They flew around the yard, diving at each other. Tansy's eyes were bright with laughter. When Granny Nell finally stopped playing, do they always come up when you play? Granny asked. Well, I usually play about the same time every day, Granny replied. My little friends wouldn't know what to do without their afternoon music. She ran her fingers over the strings. What is that thing you're playing anyway? Tansy asked. It's called a dulcimer, Granny replied. An old-time dulcimer that belonged to my mother. She looked at the sun. You better be on your way before the sun sets. Come back tomorrow and I'll show you how to play the dulcimer. Oh, will you for sure? Tansy asked. Sure will, Granny replied. Now, scoot. And there's a picture of the dulcimer on page 238. Kind of like an auto harp. Sometimes maybe you've seen one of those. Anyway, lots of fun to play with. You don't have to be real talented to play it. But you kind of play by ear and, kind of like the harmonica, kind of like that. All right, so there's our start. And tonight, or sometime during the day, you're going to read page 239, and you're going to stop at the next chapter, which is 244. So it's about 5 or 6 pages. You're going to read that much. And so today's assignment is done. Tomorrow you're going to read Summer on Shady Mountain. And then on Wednesday you'll read Mountain Melodies. And then I'll have your quiz ready for you on that day. Okay? All right. That's all you need for this time. Bye-bye.